Hello everybody, welcome back to Covent Garden and to Goodwin's Court. I'm back here. I'm just about to film the next or first inaugural video of Stephen Bull and I walking around this extraordinary historic home to discuss it in detail, document everything that's happened to it so you understand about it, but also to give you the intro to Living with Listed with Stephen and I that we will hopefully set to become a series that we would love for you to be involved in. So firstly, thank you to everybody who liked and commented and responded and aired their thoughts about the question of whether there would be an appetite for Living with Listed. Clearly there is, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was really such an overwhelmingly positive experience for me on that one, so thank you. We'll try and make this the best we possibly can. With regard to the channel itself, I'm still an estate agent, so I'm still having to shoot and document properties that I will be listing for sale. But with regard to the Living with Listed series, that will be a separately titled thing on a separately titled playlist on my channel, just simply Living with Listed. So hopefully easy for people to find if that's all they're interested in. And also with regard to the individual videos, they will just be titled Living with Listed, and that's where you'll find them. Now, I would like to invite everybody to be part of this. This is a series that is hopefully, I'd like to involve as many people as possible from a questions point of view, from a content point of view. If you have got any specific questions, it's almost like an open forum, I guess. We will come up with some ideas that we will pitch to you, the viewer, to ask your opinion on whether you think it's worth pursuing that particular topic. But if you have something that you would specifically like to know about listed properties, the technical side of things, just email me, please. It would be better if you could not comment anything you'd like to know in the comments of a particular video. They just get a bit lost in the sort of the melee of it all, if you like. So email is always best if you have any particular questions you'd like me to speak to Stephen about that we can then put into a particular video on. So simon@uniqueproperty.tv. Please send any questions, any comments, any thoughts you have directly to that email address. They'll come through to me personally. And lastly, just before we get started, I would like to just explain, if you are one of those people that's heading into this sort of journey to understand and you really want to get into the whole historic listed home side of things, my journey started a couple of years ago, quite a few years ago now. I'm 52, probably early mid-40s when I really got the passion for it. I'm lucky enough to deal with properties that really float my boat in that respect. But for me, the whole journey started with a book by Peter Ackroyd. It's just simply titled London. It is an exceptional read. This was the book that really got me fired up and sort of threw me down that path of understanding more about London itself and some of the architectural elements to it. I've known about Dan Cruikshank for a while, but a viewer of a tour I did of a Huguenot house about a year or so ago recommended this specific book. I've bought it, so thank you. I'm about a quarter of the way through it. This is, if you're into Georgian history, this is an exceptional book. Such an interesting read. Definitely worth recommendation for that. Then if you're into more the technical side of things, if you have got a passion to learn about the intricacies of historic homes and listed properties, there are a couple of other things I would set you off on, and you can do your own research, but this is where I got started, so I hope it just helps you. Georgian and Regency Houses is one of a few books written by a chap called Trevor Yorke. Excellent read, really detailed, does a bit of history as well. He writes about all the periods, specifically sort of medieval all the way up to Victorian. Really interesting guy, very good read. And I have just purchased this, haven't started it yet. I've flicked through it, but a lady called Linda Hall, who has written a book about fixtures and fittings, and you can see the time periods there from 1300 to 1900. That, from what I've seen so far, looks like it's going to be an interesting read. I'll report back on that, but that is definitely worth a look if you're interested. Some resources if you're into Georgian property. The Georgian magazine comes as part of a membership to the Georgian group. Really fascinating. It's been around for a long time. Fascinating reads, well worth joining. If you're into generally older historic buildings, SPAB, the Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings, is definitely where you need to head to on the website. And if you own a listed building and you don't know about them, the Listed Buildings Owners Club, they're based in Kent, they are a brilliant resource and really helpful. They run London expos every year. I went to one about 2 years ago at Kensington, really interesting, loads of interesting stuff and lots of help and resources about ownership of living with listed. And yes, I will leave link everything to everything I've just discussed in the description box below for you to have a look through and reference at your leisure. So, right, I'm going to wait for Stephen to arrive. We're going to get that camera on, starting outside, and crack on with this, hopefully, around about a 20-minute to 25-minute fascinating tour of this extraordinary home in Goodwin's Court. Well, hello everybody, welcome back. I am finally delighted, really honoured to introduce you to my friend, good friend and adopted mentor, Stephen Bull, who is going to take the charge now, and we're going to chat about this house. We're going to have a wander around it. We're going to talk about the history, the detailing of the restoration that's gone on. But first, I would like to hand you over to Stephen, who's going to give you a little intro on himself, what he does, and then we'll start outside. Stephen.
All right, thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you, Simon, for making this possible. And yeah, it's interesting. I mean, this is a project that has been important to me over a number of years. And my background is that I started out in my former career as an art director, working in publishing and working on home interior books. And then I suddenly started doing the buildings for real. So it's been an interesting transition from doing something on the printed page to actually doing something three-dimensionally and also working with my hands. So it's been fantastic, and I think the research as well has been interesting, because it's not just working on the buildings, it's everything that goes with the historic building. So it's the research, it's the finding where the timbers come from, finding where the limes come from, where the bricks are made. We try and replicate everything if possible, and sometimes once we've been on a job, you wouldn't know that we've been there. We use handmade nails, we add the rear of the boards that no one will ever see. Only God will know the amount of effort that's gone in some of the reverse of these timbers that we've worked on. Having said that, we do have a team. I have had a team of up to 10 craftsmen working for me, and we use power tools and we use rail saws. And the younger workers who are in their 30s will use all the modern technologies that they can to get the same effect that I would try and achieve with hand saws and jack planes. So yes, I think it's you'll find as we go on, you'll understand what I try to achieve with the buildings that I work on. So I only work on jobs that I find interesting, and amusingly, only within walking distance of my home on the South Bank or a cycle ride. I like to keep it local, and I like to train local people up to work on local projects.
So there we have that introduction from Stephen. Thank you very much. As mentioned in the intro, this is the first of the Living with Listed series that we are hopefully going to be putting together for your enjoyment. I will be wandering around now with Stephen. I'm going to let Stephen take the charge. He's the expert here. He's the one who's going to be talking about the history of not just the building, but the wider area and what shaped the history of the street, Goodwin's Court. I think it's important to reference this when we are talking about properties that are listed and interesting historic homes. So come with us on the journey, first of Living with Listed. Let's go and take a wander. Okay, so Stephen and I have just been chatting, and on Stephen's advice, based on what he thinks is going to be a pretty lengthy tour of the house, detailing the history and the building itself, it might be advisable to split this over to maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 episodes of this first edition of Living with Listed. So that's what we're going to do. First episode will go live, and then we'll be releasing the next episode or next section of this video over the course of 2, 3, maybe even 4 days when we go live next week. Right, we're starting outside, and we're trying to make a break for it before the Harry Potter tours turn up, because there's quite a few. Stephen, right, let's go.
Okay. Goodwin's Court, number 1 Goodwin's Court, inspiration for Ollivander's wand shop in Harry Potter. Apparently J.K. Rowling used to work in a secretarial office around here, and she used to cut through here every day and thought if she ever wrote a story, then this would be the scary alley that would feature in her book. And it turned out that it was based on Goodwin's Court. It was Nocturne Alley, it was Diagon's Alley, and it was Ollivander's Wand Shop. And yeah, so this is it. And it was kind of one of those moments when I watched the series a number of years ago, and I said, wouldn't it be nice to do Ollivander's Wand Shop? And then within 4 weeks, I had a phone call and an email from the client saying, I have a small property that you may be interested in working on, Covent Garden. And this was it. How could I resist? So I've been working on it now on and off for quite a few years, and it's now coming to completion, and hence Simon being involved, but it will be rented or sold in the near future. But let us show you some of the interesting points. First of all, I want to talk about the steps. If we have a look at the steps, when we took this project on, this area was all covered in cement, and it was in cement at this level here, right the way through. We just allow these people to pass. It had a cement render right up until this point here, and the important thing is that we want to take cement off of the brickwork because it traps water, and once we've taken it off, we did the brick repairs. This is all lime work here. Lime is a calcium carbonate. It's a chalk that's been burnt and then mixed with an aggregate, and it's a traditional building material which we can talk to you about in the future if you let Simon know. And so it's better than cement. Cement has a Newton strength of around about 65 and sets within 24 hours and gets harder. Lime has got about 1 Newton, if that at all. Soft lime putty has none at all. We're not looking for strength. We're looking for holding the bricks apart and drawing out moisture. If we look at this here, this is where the cement line was, and we've taken it off. All the timber here had rotted away because of the cement that was on it, and the bricks had failed. So we took the cement off and we repaired the bricks, repointed it. And there was a little bit around here somewhere, I seem to remember, that we found that the building was originally painted yellow. All this brickwork, all this timber work here was yellow, and the bricks were painted red, and you can see some red dye or stain on here at the moment. And then the pointing in between the bricks was white, and you can see here a little bit of what's called tuck pointing in the brick. Sometimes it was painted on, as we've got there, but most importantly it should be in between the brick joints. But hey, you know, some guys painted this so they want all the perpendiculars to line up, so when you look at the building you should be able to see a whole line of bricks in a straight line. So it means all your perpendiculars line up, and then all your beds would have a white line in them as well. So some of this is grinning through here. Well, one of the ways that they used to do it was when they laid the bricks and they got a brick joint, they closed with some brick dust. They would actually mix up brick dust with the lime, and they would close all the brick faces, so it was just like one wall of brick. And then in the soft lime putty, they would strike out with a pointing iron, a straight line with a ruler and a spirit level, and then they would fill that with a pure lime putty, which is white. So this was kind of quite a gay building when it was first built, because it would be bright red, almost oxblood red, with white pointing and yellow yellow woodwork.
So is there any reference to things like this? I mean, this is that's wood, is it?
This is timber. This is all timber, and this has been painted in a linseed oil paint. And we chose, instead of going for a black, we've gone for a dark green, which is a Georgian colour. And originally, these holes here would have been where the shutter bars went, and the shutters would have fitted on a recess here. And if you look at the top up here, you'll see, if my ruler, almost just, there's a ridge there in here, and the shutters would be pushed up into there, and then they will go on here, and you'd have a wing nut that would go in here, and you'd have a bar that would go across here with a eyelet and a padlock.
And you said this was refaced in 1820 in the Regency.
1820. So I'm not sure about this window. This window might have been earlier, but it's very typical. The glazing bars are very typical of 1820. And what's unusual is the glazing bars are round the wrong way. So normally you would have this detail on the inside of the window, and the putty would be on the outside. But here we've got the putty on the inside and the glazing bar detail on the outside. It would have been straight shutters right the way across, and you'll notice that the window is bowed. And some of these windows, like the property adjacent to us, has been remade, but the twerp that actually made it has put a bow in it from top to bottom. So we've got a bow from top to bottom, and we've also got a bow from side to side, which means you would never ever be able to put your shutters on there. The reason they've made the mistake is that this is an original window, and you'll see that this centre line here is actually bowed out, so you no longer get your shutters in. But what's happened is that the building, the brickwork, has compressed. There's a big piece of oak in here above this open window when it was constructed, and the oak has compressed the window. So the glazing bars, where the joints are, the glazing bar is literally, where are we now? It's done that. Okay, and it's done it at that point there, so it's done that, and it's done it consistently right the way across. So this is coming out, this is going in. There's no more movement on this property. It all happened, I would have thought, relatively soon after it was built, and then they had the shutters and thought that'd be a great idea. Shutters never work, so then they've got display shutters put on the inside. So that really is a development of the shutters. The shutters would have been taken off and put inside during the day and then come out at night time.
We can't really ignore that gate, that big old gas lamp up there.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? It's really kind of quite amazing.
And that is gas, isn't it?
It's gas, and it's on a timer, so it comes on a certain time. At one stage when these were first put in, there'd be a gas lighter, and he'd come around with a ladder and he'd go up there and he'd light it. But nowadays there's a timer with an ignition on it, and if you look carefully, you might not be able to see this, but if you look, there's a gas flame in there constantly. We might be able to see it from around this side. There's a little gas flame in there all the time, and then when the timer comes on, it lets the gas go out. When these were first installed, these lamps, they were running off of natural methane. So they were running off of, there's a sewer that runs through here, right the way down the middle of Goodwin Court. It comes out along here, and it would have been running off of the methane. This is a stench pipe from the existing sewer system that we have running through here. So actually you could probably, I wouldn't like to know whether there's much methane coming out of here. But
is that a reference to this?
This is a reference number to the lamp, so there would have been a reference number. So if this broke down, they'd say number 7455 needs a new glass shade. But we, while we've been working on this, we came down here one day and all the gas lamps are gone. And the guys that were working for me phoned me up and said, "Oh, the gas lamps have all been stolen." So I went into a bit of a fit, and I thought, how can I get the glass made? How can I get the tops made? How can I get a metal worker? How much is it going to cost? Whose liability is it? Who's responsible for it? Is why we had scaffolding up. And it went on like this for ages, I have to say. It went on for quite a while, quite stressful.
The one thing that I found interesting more than anything with the outside of this building is these 4 steps. If you could just explain.
Yeah, I'll tell you about the steps. I'll just tell you about this briefly though, because what happened was that it was British Gas. They'd noticed that there was scaffolding going up, and they very sensibly came along and took all the gas lamps down, but they didn't tell us. So it was that kind of stress factor for a while. We'll talk about the steps, quite right. Now these are a bit of a mystery, because if you look at these, you'll notice that we've got this step here and this step here are the same stone, and this step here and this one are the same stone. So I'm not a geologist, I'm not familiar with the beds and cuts of stone, but I have a feeling that these two are Portland and these two might be Reigate stone. But it needs more investigation, and it needs a kind of serious thought, because if you look at these ones here, this is a piece of Portland, and that Portland there is what, that's 5 inches, and in the centre is 2 inches. So that's footwear. Now this went in maximum of 300 years ago, 1700, 17, 18, 19, 2000. So 300 years ago. There is no way that this step will wear in 300 years when the floorboards haven't worn down to the same extent. So these have come from somewhere else. And now I've done some research on this, and I found that Bedford House was at the top of the road. This is on the Bedford Estate. The Bedford Estate ran from St Martin's Lane to Drury Lane, and it was owned by the Duke of Bedford, and it was from the Strand, which was known as the Golden Mile, up to Longacre. and he built a rather grand house here called Bedford House, and it was the Russell family that owned the estate, and they had built the house. They had a Russell house on the south side of the Strand, and then they moved here, and they were granted the land which was the convent of Westminster Abbey. So this was the Covent Garden, and they inherited it, and on that convent there was a chapel, and there was a brew house, and there was a kitchen, and it all was part of the monastic order, and that would have dated back to medieval times, I would have thought, or William the Conqueror first set up Westminster Abbey. These have certainly come from somewhere, so it's up to you, good listener and good viewer, as to whether you think these are monastic, whether they are from the chapel, where devotional people would have gone up on their knees to get into the chapel, or whether it's the brew house or the cookhouse. But this has had heavy footfall, that's for sure. These two obviously are together, those two are together, and these two are the most worn, so I would have thought those two are the oldest, but I think they are medieval. And they could be the oldest part of Covent Garden that's visible on display, and certainly the oldest part of Bedford House that was demolished in 1700 when this building was built.
It's amazing to think as well, these were constructed only 34 years after the Great Fire of London.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you have a look at this, Simon, just have a look at that. That's a big piece of Portland stone there, which is coin stone on the corner here, and we've repaired it with some tiles, which is a traditional way of repairing stone and brickwork. And this is one big oak post that goes up, and it's holding up the whole of the corner of the building. The whole building is sitting on this oak post, which is a bizarre way of building because it's right on the corner. It's not fixed into the wall at all at this point, and it's not fixed into the door frame. So wow. It's standing here on this coinstone, on this brickwork, on this corner, quite happily for 300 years, and do so for another 300 years without anybody touching it. But it is quite a unique build, because we're on a hill, so we're on a slope, and they got to this point here, and they couldn't. The other buildings, you'll notice, the other 7 out of the 8 have a door in this position here to enter the shop. And it's so high off the ground here that you couldn't enter the shop with the door being here. So they've thought, okay, let's put it on the corner and we'll have these steps. And where can we get the steps from? We can get them from the chapel. So let's put them in here, and we'll put a door on the end. And then we've got a gas mantle here. This went in obviously later. Not sure what time that would have gone in. Obviously they're Victorian. When did gas light come in? Maybe 1840, 1850 maybe. I'll have to do some research on that. But as I say, when they were first in, they were lit by someone with a match.
Lovely. Should we head inside?
Yep, just tell you about the door. The door is an 1826 door with a double reed on the bottom and a single reed on the top panel here. Very classically 1826 with an 1826 original knocker. This was introduced by my client later, and we've had new security locks fitted. And this was just, when we took the building over, it was just a plain piece of glass painted black with this number on the glass. And we had a fan light made in Ireland to the traditional pattern of the other 7 buildings, and we've got handmade glass in there. So that's a leaded fan light. Originally, I think when the door was first put in here, it would have gone from here to the top, so you would have had an 8-foot door with a number of panels in it. And this one is an 1826 door. The building had a makeover, was built, I believe, in 1700, had a makeover in 1826. It was running for about 100 years as a haberdasher shop, and Mozart on his first European tour stayed in Cecil Court over the road. So if he'd wanted a bow for his hair or a buckle for his shoe, or a ribbon for his shoe, he would have come here to this property to have bought it. And that kind of fits in with the yellow paintwork and the red brickwork and the white pointing. It was very kind of Regency, actually earlier, that's 1700, so it was part of the earlier scheme, which was very gay, and it kind of goes with the Baroque music that Mozart would compose. This is 1826, so this, if you put it in musical terms, this is Beethoven, this is modernist in 1826, and this is brutal. So they've got away with all the frilly parts, and they've just made it very, very functional. So the 1826 architecture, Georgian, still Georgian, but this is, instead of being Baroque and highly decorated, this is very plain and almost brutal.
get in.
Well, this is very much going to be walking around, kind of firing off from Simon's prompts as to what we should be talking about and what we should be showing, because there's so much to talk about and so much to see. Start with the panelling. Well, one of the amazing things is this book here, which I'll just show you, because this is about London's Golden Mile, which is about the properties on the Strand, and has been my source of reference. And if we look in here, we've got Bedford House, which is here, and this really is the whole of the Covent Garden. So it covers the piazza and the First Lord Russell. But in here they mention about there being a long gallery, and the long gallery was so here we have, this is Burley House, we want Bedford House. I was fiddling farting around trying to find it for you. There we go, so this is it. So if you can just focus on this for a second, that's the Strand. If you know London, this is the Strand. The River Thames is down here. This is Bedford House, and this is the Covent Garden Piazza in here. And this area here was taken up by Bedford House. And in here there is a chapel, and over here there's a brew house and a stables and a cook house. And we are just here. We're literally just off of the page. Just the Piazza, Bedfordbury is just here, and Goodwin's Court is just off of the page. So when this was all demolished, the Georgians wouldn't throw anything away. They'd actually reuse it all. So all the building materials, the stone was worked out and worked a price out for, all the timber was worked out, all the tiles, everything was used, salvageable. And then this is built on the Duke of Bedford's estate. So he would have commissioned this to be built. So
who wrote that book? So
there we go. His a lecturer at Kent University. I'm actually he's actually invited me now because I got in contact with him to.
Manolo Gur.
Yes. So I'll hopefully be giving a talk on Goodwin Court at Kent University. But one of the interesting things is there's a long gallery on the property which faces the Strand, and the dimensions of it are pretty much the same as the width of Goodwin Court and the length of it for all the 8 properties. And in here we have wainscot panelling, which is, wainscot means it's just from waist height. And the reason you have wainscot panelling is because the lime that we're dealing with here is very fragile. And when you have your chairs, you want the chair back to go against the wainscot panelling and not the lime. It preserves the lime at the lower levels from deteriorating. So the fashion was to have full panelling or wainscot panelling, half panelling. But in this book, they mention that from the archives, which are now in still in Bedford House, but it's a Woburn Abbey. They've got the archives, and it mentions wainscot panelling, and this has all come from somewhere else because it doesn't fit. The panels don't fit, and you'll notice upstairs, and I'll point it out again, that they've been cut down to make the space, and the skirtings don't line up. So it's come from somewhere else. We know it went in at 1700 because there's no plaster on the wall behind it. So this panelling went on when this building was built in 1700. We've repaired all the panelling, and this panel here was in a number of splits. It was all covered with hardboard and plasterboard, as was this wall. And we've repaired this, and we've repaired this with animal glue, hot animal glue on Hessian. So the Hessian holds the panels together, and the glue acts as a binder. But when we worked on it, we found that there was a hole here which had been chewed by a rat from the inside. We think he got in under the step behind the panelling, couldn't get out, and started gnawing away. So we haven't done a timber repair on this. We've just left it as we found it. We've painted it, obviously, but we've painted over the top of all the original paint because it gives a nice age to the building. This is a failure, not on anybody's fault. We found evidence of this being a brown wall, and we had to replaster it and repair the lime plaster, and then we've treated it with various fixing agents first of all, which is a traditional way of sizing the wall, and then we've used a brown. And we were told by the paint manufacturers that this would be a problem because to achieve this colour is very heavy laden with pigment, and it may fail. And it's failed in exactly the same way that we find examples of plasterwork failing in the past. So we know we know this is a failure. Now, do I live with this failure and just put over a coat of polish over the top and feature it? You'll see some walls that we've left upstairs. Or do I then kind of consider repainting this, maybe in a white lime wash instead of the dark brown, or pursue with the brown? I don't know. I've got too much to do. Just talking about the interior. Well, yes, part of what we do is conservation. I like to think it's conservation as opposed to restoration. This is just a tribute to Harry Potter. This is an original Georgian broom, I have to say, and it is from my wife's family, and I have swept up with that. It's not a kind of faux prop. It's the real thing. What's interesting about the floorboards is that this was covered with hardboard, plywood, laminate floor, lino, you name it, it was on here. And I think the floor came up to about 2 inches higher than it actually is. And we managed to take everything off and then look at the floorboards. We don't sand the floorboards. Do not sand the floorboards.
And why is that?
Mainly because we want to have to show the wear. And what's important about this little property here is, I said it was a haberdasher shop, and somebody, male or female, has been standing here for 200 years. If we stand there, you can find exactly where someone has been standing, with the door opening, looking down Goodwin Court, with a counter. So what it's told us is that someone stands here, and we know that the counter would have been 2 foot deep, and we know it would have been here. So we've reconstructed this frame where the division between the customers coming in and the shop would have been. And here we know there would have been wainscot panelling across here at low level, a door, and then glazed, and a glazed window here. And you would open the window, slid open, don't know, to sell whatever you've got in the shelves behind you. But importantly, the wear is there, and then Mr. or Mrs. has plodded over here at every transaction. Bear with me now. And then here, this is where they dropped the cash. So the cash was dropped through to the basement, and we found all this here. This has come from when it was a bookshop, and these are all the cash receipts that they've got. Not cash receipts, these are where the bankers put in their change, the silver, and they bag it all up. So we put those under the floor in there where the hatch was, and then we'll leave that there for somebody to find in the future. But you can see where the footfall has been going across. And of course, you know, the failure of a Georgian shop is the fact they go to all the trouble to have a counter and a door and a window to save losing stuff. And then you've got a staircase where anybody, if you turned around, they could nip upstairs and steal your silver. Hey, crazy. Anyway, that's the way it was, and that's the way we've conserved it. If I can just talk about the wear on the floorboards here, we've also kept the wear on the stairs. And the whole idea of what I'm obsessed about is that we conserve what doesn't exist. And that's a really kind of quite a strange kind of concept. So how do you conserve what doesn't exist? Well, we conserve the wear. So here you'll notice that is so heavily worn. And someone had knocked off all the nosings. That's this bit here that protrudes. They'd chiselled all that off. They had then put cement on here, self-levelling compound, and then they'd put lino on it, and then they put hardboard, and then they put plywood. So it had gone higher and higher up the riser, which meant the steps were very short. Well, the steps were the same height because this one was elevated and so was this one. But then they put carpet on it, so you had a very short step. It was quite dangerous, so more like a slide than a step. So what we've done is we restored all the treads, we put new nosings on it, and we've taken the underside of the plaster off, and we've reinforced the whole of the staircase. And what's important with staircases, it's very unusual for the staircases to be changed, and you can date a building by the stringer that is on the side of the wall. It's very rare for these to be changed. So this gives you your architectural profile, and that architectural profile is used on your architrave and on the top of your skirting boards, because when you come down to the bottom of the staircase, that detail there runs along the top of the skirting. And then you have to work out, okay, how do you finish it then? Well, you don't just cut it off. You either do a return on here, like a bullnose return, or you do what we have here, which is you turn it round into a right angle and run it down to the floor. So that's a traditional way of finishing a piece of skirting, but lots of this didn't exist, so we have to kind of work out how we proceed. This wall was covered in cement up to about 2 inches thick, and we took it off and we replastered it, and the cement oversailed the whole of the staircase. It was a complete mess. So now it's all been relimed. The ceiling, we've got some photographs of it before, which I think Simon is going to put in as a kind of drop a picture in. But this ceiling was in holes, and it had plasterboard on it, and we dropped the plasterboard off. Unfortunately, we found the original laths, and we found that there was probably 50% of the original plaster left. So we replastered it in 3-coat lime work. That's to say it has 1 coat, scratch coat, and then a top coat, and then a finish coat in plaster of Paris and pure lime putty to get the finish that we're looking for. We also replastered this. This originally came right out there with plasterboard in a kind of, and gypsum plaster in a kind of crazy fashion. So we've now corrected this and re-supported it and strengthened it, and again pictures will be available of how we did that. This was all had cement on it, and we chipped all the cement off to get back to the bricks because the walls were saturated with water. So what we have to do is we have to release the moisture, and the way we do that is we repoint it on the outside with lime, and we repoint it on the inside with lime, but we take the cement off.
And in fact, you've already explained to me, it's fascinating. Can you just give us a quick overview on lime plaster and the lime, the way the lime works and operates?
The lime process. Well, lime basically is the Egyptians knew about this, and the Romans knew about it. And I'm sure that when the Romans suddenly came across the English Channel, the first thing they see are the White Cliffs of Dover, and that's a kind of real come on because they're after the minerals, and the Romans were after the chalk. And you make lime out of chalk. You can make it out of limestone. Further you go up the country, it becomes limestone. It's just 168 million years old, so it's Upper Jurassic. So we're talking about the land of the dinosaurs. But you quarry this limestone, and then you burn it, and you turn it into quicklime, which means all the water has been driven out, and you burn it with brushwood in layers in a bottle kiln for 24 hours. You rake it out, you crunch it up, you add water to it where it explodes as it takes the water back up again, and that's called a hot lime mix. And then you make sand with it, and you mix it all up, and you make a putty, what's known as a putty, which is a mortar mix, which is 2 parts sand and 1 part lime. And that has the ability, when it's in between the bricks, it has the ability to draw any moisture out of the bricks and release it out of the brick joint, because the chalk in the brick joint is water thirsty, and it has the ability to evaporate. So if you have a piece of chalk and you put it in a bucket of water, it'll bubble and it'll become completely saturated. It will become 3 times heavier with the water, and you put it in the sun and it will release the water, and it will go back to being light again, almost like pumice stone, because the water has been driven out. And that's what you want in historic buildings. You want the ability for the lime to take up moisture, to use it to its best advantage, and that is to reset the joints or drive moisture out of the brickwork, and then reset. And that's what lime plaster does. And if you've got lime plaster on the surface, it's doing exactly the same. It's releasing moisture.
It's amazing why more modern methods aren't used.
Gypsum was brought in after the war, along with plasterboard, mainly because we were so badly bombed after the Second World War, and we had an unskilled workforce. We lost a huge amount of lime burners and lime plasterers in the First World War in the trenches. We lost a load more in the Second World War, all the labourers and all the guys that knew how to do this. So there was a generational break between those that knew how to do it and practiced it. And there was, in the 1960s, there were people, lime was virtually unheard of. You know, they thought they'd put it on the land as a fertiliser. You could buy hydrated lime from a hardware shop, but you only used it to improve the soil conditions, because it dries out moisture. If you've got a clay soil, it'll dry out the moisture by putting it on the soil. So farmers used to use it. And then in the 1960s, 1970s, there's been a big lime revival, and then the lime forums started up. And my favourite guys, who I'll mention throughout this, is the SPAB, Society for the Protection of Ancient Buildings. They run lime courses, and they really started to reignite the use of building limes, traditional building limes, and out of that, the lime forum was born. And they promote using traditional materials. But as I say, after the Second World War, there was an unskilled workforce. So they used plasterboard and gypsum plaster, and they introduced Dulux, I shouldn't mention the trade name, but they introduced emulsion paints, which were vinyl. So they had plastic. Vinyl is plastic. So you've got a gypsum plaster going on your wall, which is a hydrophile. That means it sucks up moisture but won't release it. And then you trap the moisture in with a vinyl paint, so the building won't breathe as it should do. And these buildings have to ventilate, same as we do. If you put a black plastic bag on yourself and run round the block, you would sweat. And you'd take it off and you'd be covered in moisture. And that's what happens to a building if it's got gypsum plaster in it and if it's got vinyl paint in it. Modern buildings have different modern techniques. They have cavity walls, they have breathable membranes, but these buildings which don't have cavity walls, they're solid brick, 8-inch brickwork. There's nowhere for the moisture to go if you use inappropriate materials. So really, I suppose these series of short films that we'll be making are promoting how to really look after your building in a holistic approach to historic building repairs, and one that's not going to cost a fortune. It's just going to be right for the property. You know, it's using the right materials for the right job.
And fireplace.
Fireplace, let's do a quick one on the fireplace. I'll mention this throughout, that lots of this stuff has come from my workshop. I have an obsession about not being able to go down the road, walk past the skip without looking inside it and seeing what work's going on to what particular properties and what's being thrown away. And I live on the South Bank in Rupel Street, Widdesley Street. There are 3 Grade 2 listed buildings. This property is Grade 2 star. The buildings in Waterloo are Grade 2. And I look at all the planning notices that are going on, and the worst is when you get developers in and they don't know what they're dealing with, and the conservation officers don't know what's inside the buildings, and these buildings, these features get ripped out. Now this came out, I can't say, I think this came out of a Rupel Street house, but it was never the right one for Rupel Street. It's too wide. It's cast iron insert. Sometimes you can look at them and they'll have Carron written down here, which is the Carron Works, the iron works in Falkirk in Scotland, and lots of the iron came from the Battle of Waterloo, from melted down cannon and that kind of stuff. Scrap metal merchants after the Napoleonic Wars would use all this stuff, and they'd make irons for tailors to work with, kitchen ranges, kitchen fireplaces, lots of cast iron. And this is a Carrow fireplace, and this was in the street. It wasn't from Rupel Street because it's too wide. It's come from somewhere else and then reintroduced. Anyway, I salvaged that and put it in here. It's got a new back on it. The slate came from another property that we found in the street, and I've cut that and fitted it in a traditional way. You have the join normally running between the fireplace. This surround is timber at the moment because we are planning to cast this in Code cement. So Code cement is a way, it was first developed by Mrs. Code on the South Bank in around about 1820, thereabouts, and she cast fire surrounds in it, and she made moulds, and this is a piece of Code stone, and we will replicate this in the same way. We made it out of timber for now, but that's a target there. This is another target that has been salvaged, and that one's in marble. But we can, it's expensive, possible but expensive to get it made in marble, and I haven't got the skill, but I have got the skill to make a mould for that, and then to cast it in Code stone, which would be a mixture of white cement and probably soft sand with possibly some stone dust mixed in it to get the right mixture. And we make it up out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 12 pieces, and we put it together like a jigsaw. And you put it together, you glue it together with plaster of Paris and lime putty. And if you're using lime putty, it's very slow, so you can speed up the set of the lime putty by putting in plaster of Paris, and you can slow it down by putting in lemon juice. Yeah, absolutely.
Shutters.
Shutters. Well, we've got internal shutters here, and when we were doing the refurbishment, we found that there was a shutter in here against the wall, and we found the original front door, half of the front door, against the wall here. These cupboards didn't exist. These again have come from my workshop, from salvage finds out of skips. These are 1820s. They're absolutely right for this building. They've got fielded panels. A fielded panel is where it's chamfered on the edge to get the thickness of panel, but very thin on the joints where you've got the rebate. So these are original doors, frame, shelf with a single reed on it, double reed on it, and then an upstand with a double reed on the back. That's all come from some other property, and the same with that there. And the surrounds we've made up. This is new, but we found this piece of timber here holding the roof up upstairs, and we knew that it's got a bead on it and it's got a catch on it, so we knew it's the left hand side of a cupboard frame, and we put it back exactly where it would have been it could have been either 1700 or 1820, and we haven't painted it, so it's in the dark brown. And what we've done is we've matched the dark brown to match that piece, because that's where it came from. So that's the original colour. That's the original colour, yes. So we put it back. So this room would be dark brown, and it would have been cream. Anyway, shutters. The shutter that was in here we found, and we've got a carpenter making these at the moment. So hopefully, in a couple of weeks they'll be made. We just made plywood ones now. They were sliding shutters on casters, which made it easier to slide it than this big bit of plywood. So that one goes over there. This one stays where it is, and then this one is the original one that we found, which is on casters. Rather nice little Georgian casters.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's kind of.
The intention is to replicate two more to match that.
Yeah, it's quite nice on the other side because you've got really fine bead on the other side. I won't take it out now because it's too much fag. But it's going to be two shutters would be exactly the same as this, and they'll slide backwards and forwards. So you got the option of having all three of them slid back, or whatever arrangement, whatever made you happy, you can have with those shutters, as long as you put the original shutters back. That's the important thing. And you also need them for privacy. You've got people up here that look down, and as you might see from the filming, people kind of gawking through the window. So
should we head down into the kitchen?
Yeah, let's go to the basement. I think we've done everything now. This is an original panel. This will probably be painted. These will probably be French polished, or they might be painted on the inside. Where are we now? Wainscot panelling. We talked about this. The fireplace. That's pretty much straightforward. The colour has been matched and it's been painted in a casing distemper, which is more durable than a soft distemper. Soft distemper for the ceiling, but it marks easily. And a casing distemper is a little bit more robust. That's what we've got on the wall. And we got the paint manufacturers to match a piece of plaster that came off that had the yellow on it, so we know that's the original colour. So this is an original colour scheme with the dark brown and the yellow with a brown wainscot. This is the same colour yellow here, you'll notice, and this was the front, that was the front door. And this is slightly different because it's quite heavily fielded. Fielded means that you've got this inset panel there. This is the fielding here, this slope, which I mentioned before on the other doors, but here they've left the centre of the panel proud, and that's the same on both sides. Again, we've repaired the floorboards. Which floorboards are missing, we've repaired them, and we've screwed these down with brass cups in the in the screw hole, mainly because we've been lifting these floors quite often to get the electrics through and to get the plumbing through, to get a water mist fire system in the basement, and it's easier for us if we screw them. And then we can dumb these down with either a little bit of brown paint or with black wax, which is what we'll be finishing the floor with. This has had one coat of wax so far. Pure beeswax, no stains, no dyes, nothing. We lightly sand this by hand, wash it, lightly sand it, and then wax it. As I say, we want to keep all the wear. So let's put the lights on for the basement. The lights are on for the basement.
Actually, the one thing I would say is, which is very difficult to convey on camera, but the smell in here is so atmospheric. It's a combination, I think, of the beeswax floorboards and the linseed paint, but it just does smell incredible in here.
It could be me. It could be me. It could be a little bit of wax here and there. Keeps you young. Yeah. Keeps you young, keeps you supple. We've got a doorbell here that's going back on. We've put tongue groove boarding in here because we want to try and help the bricks to release more moisture, so there's an air gap between here. Put tannalized battens on the wall. Tannalized is a chemically impregnated timber that you use for roofing battens. We put that on the wall first of all. You can submerge that stuff in water for 10 years and it still won't rot. So we've got tannalized battens on the walls, and then we've got this pine boarding with a very fine bead, which is the same as the Georgians would have used. And these are the fines that we've got. So what we do is we sieve through everything. We sieve through the lime, anything that's coming out, we check it. So we've got all these various receipts here that we've got, and various bits and pieces and stuff here. Boot polish, top of a stone hot water bottle, and a button. And then I was going through the files and I found this and I thought, well, that looks intriguing, and then realised it's the foot off my workmate. So do I keep that as a find for someone else to work out what that is in 100 years' time, and probably leave it there? And what